Okay, we'll begin our special official action meeting, and before we begin today's meeting, I would like to tell the community and speak for the board that this board did talk a few months ago about would it be possible for the months of July and August to condense the meetings, have them in the morning. That would give this board a little bit of a break from the hard work that this board has been doing. I think this board, I know that this board has covered many topics and tackled many issues from January until June. And again, this board felt it a good idea to meet on mornings in July and August. Again, to take a break. And I don't apologize to anybody for that. And that's why we're here today, to take a break, to conduct some business this morning, to get some bills paid, to correct some typographical errors, and for sure, to be out of this meeting by 8:30 this morning, because at 9 o'clock, part of this board then does go to meet and to start interviewing potential principal candidates for the principal of North Penn High School. So it's a busy day. It's a busy morning. We will have another busy morning again later this month in July. We will have an evening meeting in August, as the regularly scheduled work session will be conducted in August. At that time, we will talk about long-range planning and only long-range planning. And I'll talk a little bit about long-range planning. This board, again, has taken that issue on and does plan to complete our long-range planning process to submit to the state, that we will have that completed on time. Saying that, I'd like to read the beginning of our first cover sheet here. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania's Sunshine Law, it's necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone, state their name and their address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, I may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. Okay, let's move on to page BA1.
Mr. Clement?
Yes, Mr. Mosey.
Are we supposed to have the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you. Oh, yeah, see that? Right here. BA1, okay? What's the top? Pledge of Allegiance. I'd ask that we all stand and salute the flag. Thank you, Mr. Mosey. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks again, Pat.
You're welcome.
Okay, item number 1, we're asking for approval of the minutes from 3 different meetings. You all have received your minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by Mr. Allen. Are there questions or comments on item number 1?
On the third set of meetings, the 6/20 meeting 96, the minutes read that, and the administrative salary is approved as affixed to those minutes. I assume that will be the listing that we had prior to that meeting that'll be attached regardless of the action that we take today, this morning.
It should be.
I would think so.
The original list.
The original list.
Because as we're amending today, we're only amending isolated names, and there is no new list even to be forwarded to the public, so I assume both lists are going to have to be a part of whatever's disseminated, correct?
Both lists. Not sure
The
I
base
understand
list,
the question that we...
the base list along with those amended items, since we are not even making a new vote on the full listing to begin with.
The base list will be a part of the minutes of that meeting because that was an approved document at that meeting. And these 6 changes will be so listed.
Will be so
Does that
listed,
satisfy the question?
as well as for public
The original
dissemination.
List, the original
Okay.
list will be included.
I think what she's asking,
Yeah.
Ken, is that the information is going to be disseminated to the public. Will it be the incorrect list, including the updates, today's updates, or are we just going to
The list that we
just
will,
update one
Create a
list
new
and
the
that'll be
list that we will
delivered?
give the public at the end of the meeting will be the original list with handwritten changes acted upon today.
Okay.
That's what I
Is
think
that
she's
acceptable?
Okay, that's how I
Okay.
wondered, is that how it's
Yes.
being
Okay.
We'll
amended?
show those numbers, the
Because
I
original
think that's
number.
what she's
The
asking.
list that you have right now does not, obviously is not reflecting, you're doing that right now.
I'm making it at the moment
Okay.
as we speak.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 2, audience of citizens. Sure, Karen?
Karen Clark, Montgomery Township. I have many questions about the administrative items on the budget, but to save time, I'll question only 3 administrative salaries as examples of problems I see in the budget. I know that Mr. Weir will be making $96,000 this year, and the budget says he will be making that as the administrative director. However, on page 69, the board secretary is budgeted at $23,203. He is the board secretary. Is he making $96,000 or $119,000?
96,000.
Okay. On page 81, Mrs. Tatum is budgeted for $60,000 for community relations. I believe she's also the director or the supervisor of community ed. On page 35, that position is budgeted for $11,501. Is Mrs. Tatum making $60,000 or $71,501?
60,000.
When is the assistant superintendent going to begin work? Since that position is already budgeted on page 89 at $96,000, I'd like to know that starting date.
I'd like to know that too.
We haven't even started that
Haven't
yet.
started yet.
Okay. If none of those numbers are reliable, why did you already tax us for them? Contrary to Mr. Hill's assertion on June 20th that just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to spend it, this board doesn't spend money. Those of you who voted for the budget gave Dr. Bose and the administration the green light to spend the money in the budget that we've already been taxed for. The administration takes direction from the board, and your direction is that budget document. If you did not intend for all this money to be spent the way it's budgeted, you should have voted against the budget and continued the process, no matter how painful. As a board member, it was your most important job, and Mr. Clemens, it was your duty as president to shepherd the process, not shut it down. Since I believe the position of the assistant superintendent was added just hours before the vote on April 18th to secure Mr. Allen and Mr. White's vote, I think it's incumbent on both of them to fight now to get that position filled immediately. I know that there are at least 4 votes now to direct the administration to do that. To the administrators and board members who wonder why all the budget questions now when it's too late to change anything, when you withhold the budget from the board until right before the vote and deny the public the budget until after the vote, you leave us with no alternative. We had nothing to base questions on before, so we were very effectively shut out of the process again. Finally, this board is doing the public's business with the public's money. No matter how inconvenient or uncomfortable it might be, the public will participate, whether it's here, on the radio, in the newspapers, on the phone, or in the streets. And those of you who are uncomfortable with that, get used to it.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our audience of citizens. We'll now move on to item number 3, our superintendent's report.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is a recommendation that was tabled at the last board meeting. As you might remember, there was a question of whether or not the list was to be the subject of the vote, and that is the list of the salaries of all the professional staff. So that's a list you already have in your possession, and it is recommended now after research and the discovery that this has been our practice in the past to approve the salaries of all the professional staff, even though for the most part they're determined by collective bargaining. So it is brought to your attention again for your approval and a recommendation that you do approve that list for the 96-97 school year.
So moved. Okay, thank you for the motion, Mr. Hill. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments on item 3A?
Yes, I would like to just ask that someone answer on record that the salaries that are on this salary list, which is massive, is fully dictated within the requirements of the contract, that there are no alterations or no additions that are beyond what is technically required through the contract that we have with our unionized staff.
That is correct. For all members of the bargaining unit, they have been computed according to the dictates of the contract.
Okay, and there were no other adjustments within this?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Well, that's just my concern, because I saw no other reason why we would need to vote on a package like this unless there was something within it beyond the guide.
Well, there's always the possibility of grievances and the results of an arbitration decision, as we have in the packet tonight, this morning.
But that becomes a legal dictate.
Right, but grievances happen all year long for one reason or another. So this package is as good as it's going to get today, but the process of grievances are day in and day out.
More questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Recommended for your approval too on second reading is Board Policy 3570, Organizational Fund Management. The board has considered this, discussed it in the past, introduced it on first reading at the last board meeting. It is now ready for adoption, should you choose to move and approve it.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by Mr. Mengel,
Second.
second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments on item 3B? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next recommendation pertains to a handicapped student whose name is on file in the Office of the Director of Special Education, and this individual is recommended for employment retroactively to the 95-96 school year. And I'm not sure, Judy, is this somebody that simply was not brought forward previously?
This young man worked the last 2 months of school in the custodial
So
department.
it was less than a school year?
Yes, it
2
was.
months of the school. Your approval confirms and enables the employment.
Yeah, apparently so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is there
So
a
move on the
motion?
motion.
Second.
Said they have to be paid.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Mengel, second by Mrs. Scherr. Questions or comments?
Yes, Judy, the age of the student,
16,
working papers?
yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It is recommended that the board approve a sabbatical waiver requiring the return of this Nancy Duncan from sabbatical leave, and it's recommended that your approval become effective immediately.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Mengel, second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments?
I have a question, Mr. Clemens, if I may. Judy, what's going to happen to this lady now?
She
On
will-
disability,
Yes,
retire,
she will
or
go on disability.
permanent disability?
No, not permanent disability. She will go on disability until for 2 years, I believe.
And then at the end of 2 years?
We don't know that yet. She may most likely retire, or
Okay.
depending on whether she is better, she will come back.
Thank you.
Judy, disability claims of any sort are not within the jurisdiction of the school district, are they not, in terms, determined by insurance claims?
And law, yes.
And, okay.
Right,
But it
yeah.
isn't something that we have our direct hand in,
That's
to make a
correct.
decision as to one is disabled or not?
That's correct.
Good.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Item E likewise is the same recommendation for Mr. Ron Smith.
So move.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Mengel, second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments?
Same question, Judy, with Mr. Smith.
Same answer, Mr. Mosey.
Disability. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item F is a matter about which the board is aware. It's a settlement of a grievance. It provides back pay retroactively to 13 members of the professional teaching staff.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by Mrs. Mengel, second. Second by Mr. Hill. Questions or comments? Sure, Mrs. Krieger.
Mr. Clemens, I'd just like to know what area of the budget this money is taken out
It's the same question. I would direct that to Mr. Kelly.
Mrs. Krieger, this will have to come out of fund balance. One thing I think I need to say to the board and to the public, there's been a lot of questions of both Mr. Clements and Dr. Bose about this whole procedure this year. You're always going to have situations like this that develop. Here's 122 right here, and in talking with Dr. Miller, it probably will end up being about $130,000. This certainly was unanticipated and not budgeted for. While there may be some play within the budget, there are those items in there that will end up covering this. As your financial director, it's my job to make sure this district has a sufficient fund balance. In the past, we've only ever budgeted a $1.5 million fund balance, whereas the state recommends we have $5 million. These items that people are questioning that may be in there and were not picked up this year, they will end up in the fund balance. And so I can't say that we're overtaxing people. I think I have to say that publicly. If we were sitting here, as some districts are, with about a $6 million fund balance, I certainly would feel that way. But with this situation as it comes up, here's $130,000 that has to come from somewhere. And you're always going to have situations like this during the year. So that, Mrs. Krieger, is where it will come from the fund balance.
I think what needs to happen and what should be in order then for future budgets for this board is to allot or start another account for monies in particular this and have a certain amount budgeted annually in the budget for this type of thing. I don't particularly agree that that things of this nature should come from the fund balance. Things like this just serve to further deplete that. If the state is recommending $5 million and we're starting each and every year at about 1.5, obviously we're starting off less than what the state recommends. So it would be my request or recommendation to the board that for the next and coming budget years that we establish a separate accounting system to budget for these types of things that come down the pike for us, because as Donna's pointed out, there's no way to project into the future and know what type of grievances and things are going to come. So that would be my recommendation to the board and to the finance liaison for next year. Also, I think it would have been helpful to have the amount of money that was being expended in this grievance notated on the agenda for the public's information. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Ms. Sher?
That is the purpose of the fund balance, is to provide emergency funding for purposes like this. Unlike the line items in the budget where there's errors, that money should, as a matter of fact, my recommendation to this board, in response to the erroneous line items and those areas which are in question as to whether the board's intent is to spend that money where it's designated, is to get budget transfers in place to place that money in the fund balance so that we can alleviate the dilemma Dennis has, which is that the direction of the spending that's in the budget where it is right now he doesn't have any direction as to which is supposed to be spent there within those departments unless we address that and catch up with some of those items that there wasn't time to allow for. So that needs to be transferred to the fund balance so that within those departments you don't have them going off with that funding, otherwise it will never make it to the fund balance for these purposes. The grievance that we're here with, as I understood, that actually came down last month. The grievance was decided.
What, 2 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Began, but it was completed
In April.
About the end of April.
end of April.
So it should have been included.
So to say that this is something that we couldn't predict, we could have certainly by the time the preliminary budget in May was done.
If all
There's
folks were
advancement.
completely cooperative and we didn't have a changeover between Mr. Schmidt and Mrs. Miller, I think therein lies the gap.
Okay. The only thing I would say that, Mrs. Krieger, you're right in maintaining some balance. Dennis is right to a degree, but the money belongs where it's intended to be used, and if it's scattered throughout the budget, I don't know that it would be there for the fund balance at the end of the year, because that is the direction that does give the administration our intent of where money is to be disseminated. So we need to take care of that, I do
And we can
believe.
certainly do that for the July 23rd meeting,
Okay, that's a
and
good
for-
idea.
For the
Get it
public,
in its
it's about
proper place.
130,000?
about 130,000.
Mr. Clements, is there, or maybe Mrs. Miller needs to answer, is there some type of document or something that came out of this grievance process? The board is interested to come in and read through it?
The decision.
The decision?
Yes,
and
there
the
is a
facts and
decision
everything?
from, yes,
Right.
from the arbitrator, and you're
Fact
certainly
finding.
welcome to come and read
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
Mr. Clemens,
Yes.
I need to request from Mrs. Miller that she provide us with, to the best of her ability, the, all financial matters as it related not to the settlement, but to legal, and the legal work that was done on this. I think the community needs to realize that when we make a decision to defend against a filed grievance, that it isn't something we just decide as 9 board members, that we're receiving advice. And that advice came from the former solicitor, and that advice came from the former personnel director. And I want to know how much money we paid for this advice to lose. I don't lose well. And I think as we head into future with a new board, new solicitor, that we'd be just that much more cautious in those suits that we decide to defend against if we're going to end up losing. Secondly, I have to agree with both the ladies that there is an opportunity here, if we're only looking for $130,000, Mr. Kelly, that you take the time, or what time is necessary with Mrs. Scher and find the duplications that she brought to our attention last Thursday and the ones that Mrs. Clark so astutely brought to our attention today. I'm sure within the budget, without hitting fund balance, there's $130,000. And I think we just make ourselves find it. The other thing is that in terms of fund balance, we'd like to see more. I think Mrs. Krieger makes a good point that it'd be nice to have more than 1.5 in there, but I would caution the board not to do that, because the union is quick to point that out as a fund in which we could take money from to fund their contract. We go back to the table with the union in February, and I suggest we not stockpile in fund balance and not look like a fund that they can draw from.
Is that something that has occurred in the past?
Yes.
in other districts?
Yes.
Because my understanding of fund balance, maybe it's different for school districts, is that this is an area of the budget that is used for cases of emergency. But when I think of emergency, I don't think about paying out grievances. I think about quick repairs on buildings that have been damaged for whatever reason, or improvements, capital improvements, things like that.
Capital projects.
In the
Or
last-
is that something that the union
In the last
does?
negotiation session, if I heard once, I heard 10, 15 times as we spoke of not having money. Fingers were pointed to the fund balance. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If I'm maybe on the other side of the table, I'd do the same thing. But
Part of an arbitrator's hearing report,
right,
fact-finding.
right. It's part of the fact-finding, and it's just something, it's not the time to build up fund balance right now as we look at a new contract in February.
Thank you.
But Mrs. Mengel, I do have to throw in here that it also, besides that, it also is looked at by credit rating agencies. And we've always had a great rating here, and that's part of
Well,
my
we
job.
keep enough
make
in
sure
there to
we
keep
have-
the rating.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I don't think we should have fund 5 million, trust me. I mean,
No.
that's what the state says. I don't advocate that at all.
Right.
But I think we need to have a sufficient fund balance, maybe 2.5.
Prudence all the way around, people.
Correct.
Any other questions
Thank you,
or
Mr.
comments?
The only thing I'd like to say, Mr. Clemens, if I may, is that I was extremely distressed when I read Mr. Schmidt's initial memo dated April 15th. These people accepted the position, then they filed the grievance. According to this, they had 30 days and they did not file within the 30-day period. And then, Mr. Schmidt made a good point here. He always thought it was the prerogative of the school district to set salaries. So I would suggest that all board members do get a copy of this legal finding, because I don't understand. I thought this was our job.
No.
We hire people,
Not
then
with
after they get in,
contracts.
excuse me, Vicki, we hire people, then after they get into the job, then they decide to come after us for more money. That's basically what happened here. And I'm ticked off about that. I really find that to be very poor ethics and very unprofessional. These people consider themselves part of our professional staff. They're not a professional in my eyes. Thank you, sir.
I think
Thank you. Let's try to wrap up questions. Any other important questions?
Call for the question.
Call for the, okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item G.
This is a recommendation that the board make an exception for, I would put F and G together, they're the G and H, I should say. They're the same situation, 2 employees with less than 15 years' experience in North Penn who are retiring and leaving employment in the state of Pennsylvania, at least as in a public school system, and who have requested payment for their unused sick leave. The provisions provided by the board to all such employees in a printed document specify that 15 years of minimum service is required. So this recommendation is in effect a request that you approve by your vote a waiver of that requirement and provide these 2 employees payment for their unused sick leave in the amounts shown on both G and H.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Krieger, second by Mrs. Mengel. Questions or comments? Ms. Mengel?
Yes, Mr. Clemens, I think I have an idea where the votes are going to lie around this table, but I want to try and make the best arguments I possibly can. I'm not as all familiar with Candace Wilkins, but I'm sure she was working under the same conditions that Dr. Bond was working under. And those conditions were tumultuous, to say the least. We have been through and certainly the 5 years I've been here, we've been through a strike, we've been through upheaval back and forth on whether to build a second high school or not, in which his involvement was most necessary. We went through this last campaign, school board campaign, which was hard on everybody. And when I look at 135 sick days that went unused, that's not because he's an extremely healthy man. It's because you can't always take sick days when you want to take them. And I don't believe the atmosphere in this school district has allowed any employee of great responsibility and great magnitude to take the time off that they have coming to them. There's those of you that will say, well, he had 9 years to use them up. Well, I know we haven't had peace or quiet in this district for 5 years. That would allow somebody to take that time and feel that they were not missed, or we could get by without them. I don't believe we could have gotten by in a high school that large without Bond for 135 days if we placed him in a position where he had to scamper to use them up or we were going to take them back. In saying that, I just want you to keep 3 things in mind. First of all, we have the past practices. I believe we just went through a situation where we settled with Fred Schmidt. I believe we have other administrators in the past that we have provided their sick days because they too were needed more in the job, in the chair, doing the job, than they were at home just sucking up their sick days because they weren't sick. Secondly, it breeds situations like Charles Keffer. Keffer's situation did not sit well with many of us. He was entitled to those things those days that he received, the monies he received, but there's a situation where an administrator applied those days down to the last minute, and we were without an employee for how long in that position while he was being paid. We don't like those situations, and if we take a position against this motion tonight, this morning, it's going to breed more Keffer situations because you are going to see a scramble among those people with accumulated days to use them because they recognize the sentiment of the board and they're going to act on that sentiment in their own best interest. Third, and finally, beware the floodgates opening because I don't want to put any one administrator on the spot, but I'm sure there's a list with days accumulated to this very day of unused sick days. This decision against this motion this morning will cause, I think, heavy scrambling to the point where Superintendent Bose is going to have to regulate some time release situation that allow our people to use their days because they're going to lose them if this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to be voting to provide these people with the unused sick days because I prefer them on the job than using days. They're reimbursed at $45 a day, but when they're not there, they're costing us, what, $200, $300 a day? So that's where my vote's going to be. That's why I'm going to vote this way. I try not to be too lengthy, but it's the best case I can make. Thank you.
Mr. Krieger.
Mr. Clemens, just to piggyback on Mrs. Mangel's comments this morning, I agree with her. I don't look at this payment as being an exception to the rule. When you look at both of these individuals, they each have 20-plus years of service here in the state of Pennsylvania, and both have applied themselves above and beyond, in my opinion, the call of duty. However, in places of employment outside of this district, many corporations, many employment places are taking a look at their sick leave policies, and I think the time has come here in North Penn. It would be my recommendation, perhaps to Mrs. Mabel and to Dr. Bose, in conjunction with Mr. Hill, to take a look at the current sick leave policies. Many corporations are implementing a use or lose policy. I know from my own personal experience with my husband's company, my husband had over 100 days accrued sick time. The new company came in, bought them out, and established new sick leave policies. Gave my husband 45 days to use up most of his excess, and the rest was paid out to him in one lump sum. That might be something we may want to consider. I don't know how it would apply here. I don't know what the full financial ramifications would be to us to do that. But I do think it's in order with some of the things that Mrs. Mabel has mentioned this morning that has occurred here to this district in the past few years, and I think that the abuse has spoken for itself, and I think we do need to do something, or at least take an initial look at doing something.
Sure.
Agree with what was said. I would say it is important to drive home that when Dr. Bowen was at the principal and serving the district in the high school, we are getting a premium per diem time versus the $45 rate. And along with what Mrs. Krieger said, I believe we have to go one step further. We have an employee of 9 years with 135, another of 5 years with 78 unused sick days here. And really, what is where perhaps our most vulnerability is that we have 12 sick days allowed in this district, which in questioning other companies, I mean, people had the inclination to think I meant 12 holidays, and I'm like, no, not holidays, 12 sick days. I mean, that is unusually high. I can't say whether that's within school districts. This is traditional, but I do know that we as a board had some discussion a few months ago. As a matter of fact, it was with her regarding our director of personnel, and I thought there was some direction in that we did have to revise this, and we needed to put something in motion in order to give our staff an opportunity to adjust from not what was policy, but what was practice in this district. And that needs to be moved upon, or else, as Donna has forewarned, there's going to be a floodgate. And if we continue to allow it to go on until a few more and a few more without establishing something and putting it in place to give the opportunity, and certainly we can't do it with 6 months' notice because we'll have no staff. There's going to have to be something regarding an opportunity to use some of these steward days, because we probably have several hundred, maybe 1,000 sick days stored, Dennis, on our books amongst our various staff. Easily. We're in the thousands probably, because we've got over 1,000 staff members, and each of them storing sick days, multiple sick days each day. So we're going to have to do something, and at least if it's if we can get through to a cash out and then institute from there a formal policy for all new hires, because we can't really grandfather this to the same degree as what we can do with all new hires, which are now coming on board under the same administrative benefits or employee benefits that exist today, and bring us to this table with this situation.
Mr. Clement.
Can we suggest that Donna as personnel and
Don.
Donna's policy
Combination
look
of
into this,
personnel and policy,
please?
we'll take a look at it.
And to get with Dr. Bose too, along with Judy Miller, because I'm sure whatever Dr. Bose brings from Indiana and their practices out there would help us.
Okay. More questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Sure,
Don, I'll
Don.
wait for you.
I feel very strongly that I'm going to vote against this.
Me
a policy is a policy, and we keep taking exceptions to policies. And why have a policy we keep taking exceptions to? And I concur that that the principal and maybe Cadence Wilkins maybe didn't take all the sick days they were entitled to. But a policy is a policy, and if you're sick, you should take the sick days off. The claim here that there's going to be a rush, everybody takes 6 days. If everybody's going to take a rush to use up all the 6 days that are in their bank, sick days are for sick. I mean, if you're going to use them as vacation days and you're going to fake sickness and do that, I would hope that our staff and our teachers are not that type of people that will abuse sick days that are supposed to be for sickness. But a policy is a policy. The policy should be maybe amended, maybe things that has been recommended that 12 days is excessive, and having a bank to these large numbers is probably excessive, and that should be looked at. But today I'm voting no on this because the policy is as it is.
Dennis,
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mr. Mosey, then we'll come back.
I just agree with Mr. Hill, and it states very clearly 15 years of service. We're not talking about employees that have 14 years, 6 months. We're talking about employees that have 5 years and 9 years respectively. They're not close. And if we have a policy, let's adhere to it. And in relationship to Mr. Schmidt, he had 22 years with this school district, so he was over the 15 years. He was entitled to that. But I agree with Mr. Hill. We just got to clean it up and start changing the philosophy. And, you know, why do we set policies and procedures if we're not going to follow them? And I'm going to vote no for this. It's no reflection, nothing personal on Mr. Bond or Dr. Bond or Ms. Wilkins. But I think the day has come in North Bend. We got to start following the policies and procedures we set down.
Did we pay Elko for his time? His unused sick?
Yes, we did.
Yes, we
He
did.
was here how many years?
9 years. 10, 9.
But that was a buyout.
Let's start to bring this to close. Again, we have a meeting at 9 o'clock. There are board members that need to prepare for that meeting. I'd really like to bring this part to a close. Vicki, you had a question to Dennis?
That was it. I know of others, too, that were involved. Again, it comes down to what has been practiced and how we best protect ourselves from discrimination case and legal issues. I think that because of the practice not following policy, that we have to take steps to turn that around so that we're consistent not only with policy, but through practice, and I don't see that we can retroactively now apply it. Otherwise, it looks as though we've simply decided to take the stand arbitrarily with these two people as opposed to the others. So we do need to get something formalized on
Well,
that front.
we've
And that's why
decided
I will
that
agree with it.
combination of Don and Vicki.
And I
I'm
think
sorry, Don and Donna will work on that and we'll bring it forward. But that won't change my vote. I'll be voting no also. I believe we have a policy. I believe we treated both of these employees very fairly, and that will not change my vote. So could I call for the question?
Question.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Call for,
Okay.
roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
No.
Ms. Krieger?
Yes.
Ms. Mingle?
Yes.
Mr. Mosey?
No.
Mrs. Scher?
Yes.
Mr. Clemens?
No.
I have 4 voting yes and 3 voting no.
Motion fails. Motion fails. Motion fails, correct?
4 to 3,
Yes.
5 to
Correct.
3.
You need affirmative vote of
Right.
5
5.
votes, you only had 4.
You need a majority of the
Right.
board.
Okay.
The next recommendation
Moving on.
is pursuant to the project at North Bend High School. This is a request to approve a site survey in accordance with the proposal previously received and dated June 10th. The project fee for Showalter and Associates is $22,675.
So moved.
So, second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by Mr. Hill. Questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item J is a recommendation that you approve to the low bidders listed on BA-12 science supplies for the 95, 96, 97 school year.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
With respect to personnel, there are 25 appointments that you would make if you wish to move them as a body
Yes.
to page BA5 of professional staff.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Mengel, seconded by Mr. Hill. Questions or comments?
Questions, Mr. Clemens?
Let's make sure we know where we're getting.
Judy, I noticed that for some of these employees, Bajanski and I guess it's Gunas, and Lamont, we don't have an explanation sheet as to their background. I didn't,
We sent that
I
out.
have-
What's up?
I have
Week of
two.
June 17th to 28th.
I have two, but they weren't on my,
We will get you one, but we did send those
Did
out
you?
on the
Would
week
you
of the
please?
17th, yes.
okay.
Week
and
of
s-
17th to
And
28th.
secondly, I noticed we have some 4 elementary teachers we're hiring and 6 special ed. But we see locations to be determined.
Yes, what we're doing was that we need to hire a number of special ed teachers, and we are waiting until we hire all of them to determine what buildings they will work within.
Okay, and same with elementary? We don't have an
elementary.
assignment for them as yet until we hire them? Is that what you're saying?
We have assignments, we know where we need them. We're waiting to place them where we feel they will best serve us.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Clemens.
Mr. Clemens.
Okay. Ms. Mengel?
Yes, just a comment. As I look over the list, I know this, it's always been the desire of the school district for some time to bring in diverse people with diverse experiences to add to the population here at North Penn. But every so often, I have to really celebrate when I see a local hometown person come home to provide service to the area that raised them. And I have to point out Robert Schutzline coming back. I see he's being hired for mathematics. And for those people that know Rob, he coached under Ed Clavon for many years and was an exciting force and champion in the field of wrestling, and he's a local favorite. And to see him now come back and invest himself back into this district that raised him is exciting to me. And I don't know whether he's going to apply for the wrestling job, but I certainly hope he does and feel that he should be pursued and have his arm twisted, and I think we make him take the job. But anyway, I'm excited to see successful locals come home. So,
That will be the case, Ms. Miller.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Sheriff.
On one of these, it doesn't exactly list it. It's being placed as a professional hire. However, on the explanation sheet, it was showing a salary to be adjusted from $36,000 to $42,000, and there was no explanation.
We put that on the last sheet that we sent to you, the most recent one. It should have said that we've received final confirmation that this particular person had a master's degree, and we had to pay according to that.
No, it's one line, and it just says that it's being requested for a change.
Because she has a master's degree.
Okay, I guess that comes down to the point also that we have again a situation that's been under discussion before, especially with these temporary professional employees and the salaries that we're having. I'm also concerned over how this is affecting the calculations regarding the incentive program, because out of the 20, I had 27 hires being presented so far in the last 3 weeks of summary sheets, coming to over $60,000 above what the calculated salary was being used, that was being used for the formula on this. And we can say, well, we have extra people that we're hiring that we can juggle these numbers, but if within these people we're showing such major adjustments, and we're finding that we're hiring people at 42 and 46 and 48, as opposed to the 34,000, which was an issue I raised, that when we calculated this yearly incentive, how realistic was it that we'd actually be hiring? I know a number of board members insisted that we would be, but it seems to be, obviously, it's impractical, otherwise you'd be doing it.
No, Mrs. Shearer, we're not finished hiring yet. We know the number, and Mrs. Miller and I have talked about the number frequently, and we have assured each other that we will reach that target.
Okay, but
Before we are completed hiring all those we need for the 96-97 school year.
well, there's 25 on this list right now, and as that is going, like I said, it is in 60,000 above there. I know that there's some room in that you're assuming that some of the other positions that weren't really connected to the early retirement, those people can actually have their salaries allocated. I would prefer to see that we actually track this as far as those positions that have been vacated through early retirement, as they are filled, whether it's directly or indirectly, whether there's, a transfer from one's existing employee to that position and then a fill in there, that we know exactly what kind of savings, because if we're reevaluating this in future years as to how realistic it is, we may not be able to shuffle and play a shell game with actual hiring dollars.
Mr. Chair, we will reach that target. We know what the number is, and we are not finished hiring. And we will fill that number with those needed to achieve the goal we set when we implemented the early retirement incentive program.
It's fine, I'd just like to
Mrs.
see
Chair,
an assessment of those
Mrs. Miller and
funds.
myself have been working close on this, and we will provide the board with a report as we're already starting to work on it.
But I think as we look, there's quite a few hires that are coming in, and I know we're dealing with TPEs. The other I'd like to ask, why is, we're using a long-term sub for a reading specialist at Pembroke
That's correct.
at $42,000. My question would be, is given what occurred with the reading recovery and those people staying on board, they are remaining employees, they were obviously specialists within the discipline of reading, why would we still need to reach out to a long-term sub as opposed to a placement of an existing employee that no longer has that reading position?
Mrs. Scher, all of the reading recovery people were placed in positions that were open within the district. We then had a teacher at Pembroke Middle School go out on a leave of absence for 1 year. She will be back. We had to replace her with a substitute.
And you felt a long-term sub even better than perhaps the specialty of reading as we had from the
This
long-term?
long-term sub is a reading specialist.
And rather than the reading recovery. Okay, I just wondered because I know we had that available staff.
We don't have any left, though. They were all placed.
Any other questions or comments? We do have board members that have previous commitments. We do need to move on. Any other questions or comments?
Call for the question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Okay, let's move on.
Next, I'm on BA 5 at the bottom, support staff appointments. There are 10 through BA 6 that are recommended for your approval to be appointed.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Mengel, second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Vicki voted yes. Ms. Sherb, I think she believes she was the only
She
one.
voted no.
Teachers,
On the team,
one
yes.
negative vote.
Right.
On the
Yes.
new hire.
We're now, again, with personnel on page BA 7. There is one retirement resignation from professional staff for your approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey.
Second.
Second, Mr. Allen. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
There are 3 support staff recommended, whose retirement is recommended for your approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr.
Second.
Mosey, second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments on the 3 support staff listed? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
At the bottom of page BA 7, there is 1 professional staff resignation and 4 support staff resignations. If you want to group those,
Yes.
and motion
Yes.
to approve all 5.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Mengel, second by Mr. Mosey. Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That was one.
At midpoint on BA 8, there are 6 salary corrections, all administrative staff. As you know, you received an explanation from Mr. Weir on those corrections. I do regret and I apologize for the errors. I hope you understand the circumstances at the time they occurred and recognize that they were honest mistakes by someone working very hard under a great deal of stress and strain, who was a substitute in the office at the time. And those have been noted to you and are noted on the salary correction section of this personnel report. Those 6 adjustments, as noted, are recommended for your approval.
Excuse me, Dr. Bose, isn't it 6 professional, 1 support staff for the salary correction?
Well, it would be if you want to move them all, Mrs. Krieger, you would be correct.
Then there would be
I
7.
only cited the 6 professional, but
Oh, I
you
see.
certainly,
Well, however you
as
want to do it.
before, you're certainly, it's certainly your prerogative to move all 7 in the name of time.
Does anybody have a problem with moving all 7 at one time?
No.
No.
That's what we'll do. So we'll include also item A, support staff, Carol. Shaw?
Shall.
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 Did
Okay.
anyone make a motion?
We didn't make a motion yet.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Allen,
Second.
second by Mr. Mosey. Okay, now questions on, we'll be voting on down to midpoint on BA 9, including Carol Schaub on support staff on the corrections. Questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries.
On page BA9, again, mid-page, there are salary changes recommended for 6 support staff.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by,
Second.
is there a second? By Mrs. Mengel. Questions or comments? That carries us down to midpoint on item, on page BA 10, correct?
Right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The next recommendation seeks your approval for leaves of absence for 3 professional staff members as noted on BA 10.
Okay, is there a motion?
I don't have a motion, I have a question.
Get the motion. So, second.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by Mr. Allen.
Whatever.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
You can have
Mrs.
questions.
Krieger.
Thank you. Mr. Clements, in regards to the first individual listed there, 1K Plomsky, it stated here on the agenda that her reason for the leave of absence is childbearing. And I'm not sure if this is correct in regards to the memo we received in our packets, which described the reasons for the leave, which have nothing to do with childbearing.
Right, I think it had to do with her, was it her husband
Her husband.
relocating?
Location.
And
Right.
this would be the second year for this leave of absence. And this individual may be a wonderful teacher, and I agree with some of the things that were said. However, this is the second year in a row that we're giving or granting a leave of absence for a wonderful teacher who's not here. How long does this go on? How many years are we supposed to leave the door open for individuals who are merely living in another place where their husband is, working,
For employment convenience.
for employment convenience? I mean, where else in this country can you go and have this opportunity provided to you as a matter of your employment? I will not be supporting, and you know, this is the one that I have a major issue with, that I will not be supporting. So my question is, could we separate out these individuals for the votes to accommodate my uncomfortable feelings with this particular
Sure.
individual? And also, I would like to recommend to Mrs. Mangle that we also take a look at the policies and practices of our leave of absence practices in the district, because I just think, you know, 1 year I can understand, but 2 years, 3 years, I think that this is a bit abusive. She may be a wonderful teacher, but, you know, I think that the door of opportunity only stays open so long.
Okay. We can certainly single them out,
Just
sure.
single them out, I'd appreciate it.
I have a question.
And I'd like, can I just?
Go ahead.
I would like the reason that is given here changed.
Mrs. Krieger, it should be changed. It should not say child rearing.
No.
This is a mistake. It should be an unpaid leave of absence. And it should say, and the reason is personal.
Okay, we need to correct that. Any other questions?
Yes, this costs us no money to do this, am I correct?
Correct.
And the benefit to us is that when this person comes back, she has the right to work here, or does she, if we don't have a space available, does she bump somebody to work here?
No. With a leave of absence, the person that replaces the person going on the leave is a long-term substitute. The only thing that an unpaid leave of absence grants as a benefit to the person getting the leave is that there will be a position for that person when that person comes back, not necessarily in the same building or the same exact position, but a position. That's very different from a sabbatical.
But you had your chance. Does this penalize any other person? By us doing this, are we putting another employee at risk by giving them, by making them vulnerable to being bumped off
No.
out of a job when this person returns?
The only person that whenever we hire a long-term sub for anybody, the person who comes in as a long-term sub knows that it is only for a period of whatever we specify, whether it's for a few weeks, a few months, or a year.
So this kind of gives the school district the ability to hire somebody that we know and want, is that correct?
For the period
When they
of-
come back.
Yes, that's correct.
Is there any disadvantage to having a long-term sub for 2 years as opposed to saying the position's been vacated and hiring a full-time person? Denying the leave.
Bill, this is not a shortage area, so there's no disadvantage to the school district. If this were a physics teacher, it might be a different situation. There's a graver need for physics teachers and general elementary teachers in terms of supply and demand.
Well, then I think I would prefer to have a full-time permanent person as opposed to a year after year of a temporary person. So
Judy,
I would.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
You're doing.
Yes,
That's
Mrs.
Yeah, he's
So I can see the advantage to the district to having a full-time permanent person, so I too would like that separated.
We've already generously provided 1 year to this person?
Yes, we have. Her circumstance is unusual in that she and her family were expecting to move back at the end of this year, this school year, and unfortunately will not be able to do so.
I think I have to agree with Sharice and Bill. I think 1 year was benevolent enough, but 2 years is a bit much. It's almost unrealistic. It's like saving parking spaces in South Philly with a lawn chair. You know, eventually, that gets, people get a little tired of it.
They do it.
So,
They do a glance down.
I'd like to also add that was my concern. When I read this, I thought, boy, is this one stretching it as far as leaving it open. I think that there is a disadvantage for us as a district personally, because we're making a commitment that there will be a position, not necessarily the one they want, but there'll be a position. Well, then that leaves us in the box. So if she comes back and her experience has been in kindergarten, well, there's a position in 5th grade, there's a position in 7th. I mean, where necessarily are we placing her? Why make the reservation? Certainly, if she has such a great record with this district, when she returns back to the area, if she returns back to the area, she can certainly go through the process and apply. She won't be adding years in service, in clocking time whatsoever, but she can apply. And if in fact, Judy, you do have a position that matches her credentials and her background, and there is that opening, that may not be guaranteed, but you certainly then have the opportunity to recommend that she become reemployed by the school district. And in the meantime, for those who are here and who are ready to make the same commitment, they can be given, that can be a mutual commitment on both the employee and the district, and particularly since there has been very little gain to us with the temporary employees being paid at the exact same rate as where they fall on the contracted salary chart. And with that practice still in place, then I don't see any benefit to us, and in a sense, I share the same sense of disadvantages in that regard. Plus, I think it's a bad practice.
Mrs. Scher, just one point of clarification to help you. Anytime someone goes on a leave of absence, no, we're not talking about a sabbatical because it's different, but a leave of absence, that person does not only does that person not get paid, but that person also does not receive a seniority status, so that there's no accrual.
They can be, though, as long as there's, well, they can be also, though, where they are.
Right,
Now,
where
they
they
can be
were-
taking credits, they can be putting in time within the realm of the salary schedule, correct?
Sure, yes.
Just one question.
And we're
I
committed
know
to
we,
picking
I
it
know
up.
we have to get
You
out
all
of
have
here.
a meeting at 9 o'clock.
I know.
We're supposed to have a pre-meeting at 8:30.
Just one question, Judy.
Come.
Are we,
No, I have another
are we
meeting.
governed anyway as to how long we
At
can,
9
we can
o'clock.
keep someone as a long-term sub?
You mean, is there a law that says how long?
Yeah, a person could be a long-term, like in this particular case. If we were to, grant a second year,
He's talking
and we would have a
10-year.
long-term sub, for the second year, after 2 years, does the state, does the contract, the teachers, something say that, hey, you gotta do something with this person now?
Not to my knowledge, but I can certainly check on that, Mr. Mosey.
Okay.
And for the record, the person that would be replacing this person, if it would pass, would have been a different person.
Okay, thank you.
I think he's asking
I
10-year.
think we should separate it
tenure
out.
employment.
Okay, any other questions or comments? We will separate them. Let's start on, any, good, Paul?
If I made that motion or seconded it, I approve the separation.
Yeah. We're not sure which one of us made the motion.
I don't,
I don't even know if.
Marilyn, who made the motion?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and they
Thank
both
you
agreed
very
to
much.
separate.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, yes.
let's try it. Let's,
Taking out Mrs.
okay, we're now voting on, in each individual. We have 3 individuals, okay? Leave of absence granted to Kay Polomsky. All those in favor, am I close enough? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion fails. Second motion on
The remaining 2.
the remaining 2, could we put those 2 together?
Sure,
Yes.
yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
VA 11, the recommendation is to approve the additions to the summer school staff of the 3 individuals at $23 an hour, which is the standard rate.
So moved.
This is a result of increased enrollment. Excuse me.
Excuse me.
All right, Ed.
Excuse me, Dr.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by
Me.
Mrs. Krieger.
No, Mrs.
I'm
Mangel.
sorry, Mrs. Mengel. This is on item number 7, correct?
Case
That's
7.
correct.
K7. Questions or comments on K7?
Just a quick one, aren't there revenues also associated with this? Through
That's-
student enrollment tuitions from other school
Yes.
districts
Yes.
and et cetera?
This is
I just wanted to clarify.
Self-funding.
Basically a self-funding
Yep.
program.
Any other questions or comments?
Just wanted to clarify.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
recommendation K8 is permission to add 3 individuals for summer custodial maintenance crew work at $5.30 an hour.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey, second by Mrs. Scherr. Questions or comments?
These are students.
I was just gonna say, are these
I
students?
I think there's.
I think all 3 are.
I know the first one
I
is.
think there's students.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion
Before
made
we
to
adjourn, just to announcement, I know I announced this before, but I will repeat it, that this board will meet again on Tuesday, July 23rd, at the same time. I would hope for a shorter meeting. And that's all I have. Is there a motion,
So
Mrs. Krieger?
Mr. Connors, I just have a question for clarification in regards to the memo that we received from
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Mangel in regards to Dr. Bose's upcoming evaluation. Would it be possible, Mr. Connors, to have Dr. Bose forward to the board members an update of the identified issues memorandum that was sent out to us, 12/6/95, to just update us on what else we have accomplished since.
Dr. Bose, that's a good point that Mrs. Krieger brings up. This is the identified issues memo that you provided us with, dated January 26th. And so many of these areas you have already accomplished
I think it
between the
would
board
help.
and yourself, and updating us as part of the evaluation would be helpful, certainly for
That's
you
not a problem, right?
and for the whole board.
And
That's
and
not a problem.
just
It's to your
another point of
benefit.
clarification in that memo,
Right.
there were a couple of forms that were added to the evaluation form that we're gonna be using Do you no longer think because of this that maybe they no longer apply?
Those forms that were used in the past, and I saw them used with Alan Elko, were forms that were already set before that had goals and objectives
Okay,
on them.
and we have not
We haven't-
officially
no,
done that?
No, we did not do
This
that.
this is just an issue document that
The-
this
right.
board put together in December, but I think that an update of this would help me in my evaluation.
But this issue agenda that we put together as a board has driven the work that Dr. Bose has done. It has
Thus
been the
far.
vehicle.
Right.
yeah.
So, and I know that those objectives and things may
Right,
change in the
right.
evaluation.
And I just
Right.
asked Dr. Bose, and he assured me that he could provide that in a
Right.
packet on Friday.
Great,
So-
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
Motion
Just
to
let you
adjourn.
know, the
I'll move
August,
to
So
adjourn.
moved by Ms. Mangel, second by Ms. Krieger. Oh, I'm sorry, Vicki?
I just want to let you know, Neil, in case it has to come out with other board members, that those August meeting dates will be difficult for me. I know the one at the end of August I cannot make. I plan my vacation schedule around the calendar of our board meetings, and I do take that seriously. So when it is changed, you actually elevate my chances of perhaps having things scheduled, rather than reducing them. So that August meeting, and I don't know, we sit here today with two missing.
The August 6th meeting is a regularly scheduled meeting
In the evening,
in the evening.
but that's
Right.
just for long-range planning.
Right, that's just a work
Oh,
session. That is a
long-range
regularly
planning.
scheduled
Your
meeting.
August
Right, the August.
27th meeting, and just so you can bear in mind, because we sit here today missing a couple board members, if you have others that are coming to you, you should just be aware that that is gonna be, that's impossible for me,
Right.
to be able to attend, so I should be okay for the July 23rd, and,
Okay,
okay?
okay. So there's been a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.
Actually, do you want to say?